This time 8 years ago, I was writing this PhD thesis, and now 8 years on, I sometimes just think about my PhD and I think about the time that I had, whether it was worth it and if I regret it. So in today's video, I'm going to be just speaking about think about or discuss with friends whether a PhD is worth it and whether I would do it again if I had the chance. The first thing I think about is the opportunity cost. A PhD takes in the UK 3 to 4 years, part-time 7 years. I know that in the US it takes a lot longer. That's time that you could have spent working on your career, starting off doing something like a business, maybe starting a family. Many years that you're dedicating to doing this PhD and getting this thesis and doing this research, and was it worth it in the long run? And sometimes I wonder if I had gone straight into teaching or if I had gone straight into a career in consulting, how much further I could have been if I hadn't taken 4 years out to do a PhD. And the other day I was speaking to a friend who was thinking about doing a PhD, and I said to her, why do you want to do it? And she said, oh, my mum was telling me it'd be a good idea. And I was like, that's not a good enough excuse. That's not a good enough reason to want to do a PhD. If it's not going to give you a career improvement, or if it's not going to give you something that's going to be beneficial for you at this stage as someone who has already started working, she's already a mother, she's already in her career, why do you now need to go backwards and do a PhD? Because is it worth the opportunity? Is it worth the cost of what the opportunity could be if you didn't do it? The second thing to always think about is mental health struggles. Now, a lot of people during a PhD find their mental health to deteriorate quite a lot. Burnt out a few times here and there, but lucky that I didn't have many kind of mental health struggles, but a lot of people that I speak to really struggle during their PhD because of how much stress that you have to go through, how many times things change, so many unexpected outcomes, and a lot of the time you just don't have the support for it. You're in universities, but you're not really supported the way that undergrads are or the way that master students are. You're not staff, you're not a student, you're kind of like an in-between person. And you find that sometimes you're just forgotten about and you're just expected to just do your thing. And so it can take a really big toll on you and on your mental health, and really think about whether this is something that you want to risk. A PhD can be really isolating. You're the only one working on this project. Even if you're in a group or if you're in a lab, you're still by yourself. Everyone is doing their own thing. Yes, you might go out for coffee one day or you might meet up here and there, but generally you are by yourself. So you go from being in a big group of students as an undergrad to then being literally by yourself. You need to ask yourself, is that something that you can deal with? Are you able to be your own best friend and have your own company 99% of the time? The third is a lack of career prospects. So many PhDs that I know from those that I graduated with are not using their PhD directly. There's probably 1 or 2 people that I know that are doing a postdoc or have gone into something academic. Most people have gone into consulting or have started their own business, or one's an artist now, like me, business like social media. Most people are not using their PhD. So even if you do apply for jobs with a PhD, a lot of the time they want a certain number of years of experience. Or if you have a PhD like me where it's in the STEM subjects and you were doing things like Western blots in it or experiments, that's not useful outside of the lab. So your skill is now redundant even though you have a PhD. So it's a bit of a difficult one when you want to do the PhD, but also you want to think about your career and is this going to benefit me, or is this going to actually be to my detriment? I find that sometimes a PhD can really pigeonhole people into a quite narrow career path. Like I said, if I was doing quite biological sciencey stuff, very niche, where can I now go with that skill? I'm either going to go into another research lab, maybe into hospital, and that's pretty much it. I really can't do anything else with that skill. I have to use my wider skills and the other things that I learned, like time management and project development. I can use those skills, but I can't use the day-to-day skills that I used. So just think about that when you're thinking about a PhD. What skills and what skill set am I going to have from doing this thing? And could this be beneficial in other jobs and other careers afterwards if I decide that I don't want to continue on with this PhD? The next is the reality versus the expectation. Expectations are good. It's good to expect. It's good to think that it's going to be, romanticize your everyday and it's going to be lovely. I used to show my PhD on vlogs and I used to have a great time, and you never really saw the bad sides and you never really saw the reality of it. And every PhD is different as well. There's people that I know that were going to the lab on the weekends, were there till midnight, were there all night sometimes. the reality is very different to the expectation. Sometimes you are doing a lot of admin work, lots of things that are really boring that limit your creativity because you just have to get this other thing done. You're stuck, things go wrong, a lot of things are out of your control. Again, if you're doing something in the sciences and your cells are dying all the time, you're not actually able to do experiments because you're just troubleshooting why your cells are dying, which could be because somebody's not cleaning the fridge as they should be. And it's little frustrating things like this that where the expectation of what your day-to-day could be or should be is different to what the reality actually could be, and you end up really regretting wasting time doing in a situation that you feel like you could have done better had you not gone into a PhD. The next one is an interesting one. So this one is thinking about your personal relationships and how much a PhD can strain it. Now, this really depends on your circumstances. So when I did a PhD, I had no responsibilities. I was just a daughter in my parents' house. So I didn't have to think about who I was coming home to or like my weekends and what I was doing in the evenings. And I think that was kind of the best case scenario. But I've seen situations where people are doing a PhD with kids, or they're doing a PhD in a relationship, or doing a PhD where they're living, they need to they have quite big responsibilities. And whilst it's obviously still possible to do it, and many people have done it, it's not easy and it can strain your relationships. You're having to be there really early, you're having to come home really late, and then when you go home, work doesn't finish, you're now thinking about the presentation you have to give tomorrow. And then you have the weekends where you might have to go in the weekends to do something, and you end up having a couple of years where you're just a little bit unsocial and a little bit out of the loop. Like I said, this really depends on your situation. I had a good time, but like I said, I was just a daughter and I had nothing to worry about or no responsibilities. But if you do, it can get really difficult to balance the PhD with anything else. This is a controversial one because I hate saying this. You end up questioning the value of your work a lot, especially years down the line. Like, let me just grab mine. This is my thesis, right? Molecular control of actin cortex organization and dynamics. I had fun. I had 3 years, had a great time, learned a lot, did all this work, did all this research. I think about it, I'm like, how valuable is this? What's happened next? And I look at where the research is now, 8 years on, and maybe there's like 1 or 2 papers that are similar to this or have worked on this. And I just think to myself, how valuable is what I did in that 3 years or 4 years? And I think it's because my topic in particular is a very cellular one. So I'm looking at molecules, I'm looking at cells, I'm looking at proteins. I'm quite low level when it comes to where we're at in terms of treatment for cancer. Whereas I feel like if you were maybe doing trials, or if you're maybe somewhere a bit higher up where you're looking at therapy, or you're looking at something a bit more tangible, you might feel like it's more valuable. But I don't know, I just feel like looking back at it sometimes, would I have chosen this topic? I'm not sure. So when you're thinking about choosing a topic, or when you're thinking about doing a PhD, think about how meaningful that would be in your field in 10 years time or in 15, 20 years time. Yeah, you have to really value and love something to find passion in it. And I don't know if I do or did. The next is the financial strain. Again, like I said, I was a daughter, so I'm living at home, didn't have that problem, thank God. But a lot of students that I was with were from different parts of Europe, Iran, Spain, and they were living by themselves. So they were using the PhD finances to rent a property in London. And of course, like that's not gonna match up when you're getting paid 2K a month. And you have to find an apartment and housing and all the rest of it. You end up in a quite tight financial situation, and you also will really struggle to work because you can't get a job when you're doing a PhD because of your responsibilities. So I think it does get really tough. So if you're someone who is going to need to have a certain level of finances, look at what that might be and look at whether you can cover that and think about whether it's worth it. The last one is the pressure to publish. Now, again, this is not really a big deal in the UK because you don't have to publish when you're doing a PhD. But I know that in other countries, in other European countries, you need to publish a PhD to be able to finish your PhD. Luckily, that wasn't the case for us. We just have to give this thesis and hand it in, and then you publish later if you want. But that can be quite a big deal. I've heard this quite a lot from students that are, especially in the US, where you have to publish 1 or 2 papers throughout your PhD or every couple of years, which sounds like could be really stressful, and that could dictate the creativity of your work and sort of how much you can get done because you're just thinking about the publishing, whereas that wasn't the case for us. So again, think about this if you're thinking about like a location, where to study. The UK, you don't have to do that. So that's great. It just is one less pressure that you have, and one less thing that's going to cause you to like want to pull your hair out. If you are struggling in your PhD, then leave me a comment down below. Let me know how you're feeling. Let me know if there's something that we can help with, or if there's anything that someone else can help with. We'd love to be able to help out and give you some advice on something that you're struggling with. And I hope you found this video useful. If you're thinking about doing a PhD, ask yourself these questions to maybe get a better idea of whether it's going to be good for you, if it's going to be worth it for you. And I hope to see you in my next video.